Ouch.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Rugged Tactical, where every trigger pull tells a story and responsible gun ownership is a way of life. We're here to help you navigate the world of firearms. Whether you're a seasoned enthusiast or a curious newcomer, you might just learn something new. So today we have a very special guest. Wayne, will you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Wayne Dalton, and I'm an oldie goldie. I'm 71 years old now, and I'm Kobe's father. So we've done a lot of hunting and shooting together over the years.
Yes, we have. So it's truly been a pleasure. A lot of my experience obviously comes through hunting and fishing, camping, experiencing the great outdoors. A lot of my experience comes through being the son of Wayne, right?
Right. And Kobe has excellent gun handling skills, very safe, because he learned them from me. My dad and my mother taught firearms safety for years to the youth. And so I obviously learned that very well.
I like to have my guests rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as knowledge, as far as looks. So how do you?
3.5 now.
So it's 3.5 now. Back in the day,
maybe an 8 or 9.
Maybe okay. So yeah, as far as gun handling goes,
Yep.
where would you rate yourself?
I would rate myself as a 10 because I know all the safe gun handling rules, and I try to follow them religiously. There's just no excuse for a gun accident if you follow all the safe gun handling rules. It's like driving cars. If you follow the rules, it really reduces the amount of accidents. So
yeah, perfect. Now, as far as gun knowledge in general, where would you rate yourself?
I probably am a 5 or 6. I have pretty good knowledge of guns, but I don't own a ton of guns. I probably only own 15 guns. And there's so much more knowledge than I have about what goes into guns, ballistics, and how they're made, and how they're used, what they're designed for, and stuff that I don't really know. I mostly use guns for hunting, and so I never got into that too deeply.
I truly like what you said with regards to your knowledge of safe gun handling, right? Because if there's a certain steps that you can take in order to maximize one's safety. Now, having that said, we have cleared this gun. The action is open, and there's no live ammunition in the chamber or magazine, right?
Yep.
What's your earliest recognition as far as firearms?
Well, I remember going out hunting with my dad before I was old enough to hunt. I would go deer hunting, and it was a family activity back then. The whole family would go out, would camp, and then once in a while I'd get to go along on a hike with him or whatever. So I really enjoyed the outdoor experience, and look forward to the day that I could carry a firearm and actually hunt deer. We were hunting deer. We also hunted jackrabbits. Back in those days, they were allowed to control the coyote population with poisons. So there wasn't much of a coyote population. Therefore, there was a ton of deer and there was a ton of jackrabbits. And jackrabbits were very hard on the farmers that lived up in the Idaho and northern Utah area, and they appreciated us coming up and shooting jackrabbits. So when we started out, my first experience actually shooting a gun was hunting jackrabbits. We were doing two things. One, we were becoming great marksmen, shooting a jackrabbit running full speed at 100 yards with a high-powered rifle. Taught you a lot about marksmanship. And also we were doing the farmers a favor, and that was one way to control the jackrabbit population. They used to also have drives where they'd line up a whole bunch of people with clubs and drive them into a corner of a field or something, or into each other and club them. But I thought it was a lot more effective to shoot them. Honestly, they've changed. Things have changed now. They outlawed poisoning of coyotes, so the population of coyotes have exploded, which has reduced both the jackrabbit population and the deer population. So we don't have the same kind of animals around that we used to shoot. Now, I probably wouldn't shoot jackrabbits nowadays anyway, because I'm more of an observer of wildlife than I am a shooter of wildlife. But there was the days that I became a pretty good shot, and my dad became a pretty good shot because we did a lot of shooting.
Well, and that's one of the things that I remember too growing up, going rabbit hunting. And we'd get in a line and we'd kind of push the rabbits in front of us, and that's another key component as far as hunter safety, and that's knowing your target and what lies beyond. And so when we would do a push, we would be conscientious of roadways that would, to the side or front of us. We'd be conscientious of the line that we were on.
Right.
And this would be our range, meaning if a rabbit was in front of us, we would be able to shoot, right? But if it crossed that line, then we'd have our guns up.
If it ran back through the line, you absolutely did not shoot.
You did not shoot.
You did not point at it.
Yeah.
You kept your gun in the air or on the ground, pointing at the ground.
So opportunities like that, when you're out hunting with other people, you become more aware of your surroundings and you have good handling practices, right? Today, we have a special gun here. What is the gun that you brought?
Okay, this gun is a 270. It is a Remington Model 700, and I was given this gun, I think, on my 16th birthday, because back then you had to be 16 years old to hunt deer. Now, it wasn't my first gun. My first gun was an Ethica Model 37 20-gauge shotgun, which I wish I had today. I traded it off for a 12-gauge because we were reloading. But the 270 is a sporterized version of the 30-06. In other words, it has a little bit thinner bullet and a little higher velocity than the traditional 30-06. And the 30-06 was the gun that was used during the war. So coming off of the war, and this was a few years after the war, there was lots of brass from 30-06s. And we would take that brass, my dad initially, and then he taught me how to reload. And so we'd neck the 30-06 brass down to a 270 size and then reload it. So we had lots of ammunition, lots of brass to reload. Therefore, we had lots of ammunition to practice with. And sometimes on a rabbit hunt, we would each shoot up to 300 rounds a day. That's a lot of shooting of a high-powered rifle. So that's where we gained some of our marksmanship skills, was just repetitive shooting, to where we learned to lead a rabbit at 100 yards by 10 feet or whatever it took to...
Yeah, and that's not a stationary object. Well, sometimes they hold up, but sometimes they're coming across, right?
And they're sometimes running flat out, and sometimes they're jumping brush.
Yeah.
So it was very tricky shooting, but we got very adept at it. And that, of course, paid dividends when it came to hunting deer, which was our main thing that we hunted, was deer.
To recap real quick, as far as necking the brass down for a 30-06, right? So you have a 30-06 casing, shell casing.
Right.
And then when you run it through a sizing die, it necks it down, like the top of it, so that it can actually fit into the chamber. And sometimes you'll have to actually trim the top of the brass off, because as you size it, it kind of stretches out the brass. You have to trim the top.
If you're reloading regular commercial 270 loads, you have to trim it every time. The 30-06 brass came a little bit shorter, so you could shoot it several times before the brass expanded to where you actually had to trim it.
Okay, that's interesting. See, I didn't know that, because I've done some of the reloading with Grandpa's dies and stuff, and I've noticed that when I would run a 30-06 shell through it, I never had to trim it. Well, now I know why.
Now you know why.
Because the brass was slightly shorter, and it hasn't expanded or whatever to the point where I'm trimming it.
Right.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So if you get like a regular commercial 270 shell and you shoot it 2-3 times, then you might have to start trimming it.
You have to trim it every time. Yeah, it's my experience.
And then there gets to a point where a brass may go through so many rounds that it kind of chips or flakes, and it's just really not useful.
And it cracks or whatever, and you have to throw it away.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. But usually you can get 4 or 5 reloads out of one brass. With
regards to a 270, so other than, small game like rabbits that you weren't harvesting, because when you hit a rabbit with a 270, it's you're not shooting that rabbit to eat its meat, right?
No. We never ate jackrabbits. We did eat cottontails. Okay. Jackrabbits were a non-game animal. Cottontail rabbits were a game animal, so if we ever went out and shot cottontails, we'd shoot them with a .22 or a shotgun, and then we would actually take them home and clean them and eat them.
Yeah.
So, but nobody that I ever knew ever tried to eat a jackrabbit. Not, yeah, just because they weren't listed as a game animal in Utah. Whereas cottontails were.
We're a game animal,
So,
yeah.
I wasn't big on hunting rabbits to eat. I would rather go out and shoot a pheasant or something like that to eat.
So other than reducing the wild population of jackrabbits, which were non-harvestable, meaning you're not going to eat them, a 270 is essentially a large game animal for the most part.
Excellent for deer. Pretty good on elk, because sometimes you would like to shoot a little larger caliber for elk.
Yeah.
And I have an elk rifle that I bought to shoot elk with, but I've taken a few elk with the 270, and it does a pretty good job on them. It's like anything. Sometimes you have to hit an elk a couple of times and then wait for it to lay down, because they're rugged animals.
It's a big rugged animal. Yeah.
Usually, if you get a good shot on a deer, it's down.
It's down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's even with it. That's with the 270.
That's with the 270.
The gun that you're mentioning with regards to your elk that you got specifically is a 300 Win Mag.
Win Mag. It's a wonderful gun, but I've only shot one animal with it, and that was a trophy elk that I shot. And I never have. I didn't believe in using big caliber guns for deer.
Yeah.
Because we always used our deer.
The meat.
We used the meat, and it destroys a lot of meat.
Yeah. So if you're shooting a deer with like a 300 Win Mag or whatever, there's a potential for losing a lot of the meat.
You could take a whole quarter out just with one shot. Yeah.
Whereas a 270, yes, you can still damage, depending on where you hit it, you can still damage and ruin a good portion of the meat, but it's just probably not going to do the same as like what a 300 mag would.
Exactly. It makes it a good harvestable, and we ate a lot of venison. I had shot over 30 deer, being raised on a ranch where there were deer all over, and then we would actually get extra tags. We'd get antlerless tags, doe tags, where we'd strictly shoot the animal to use the venison. And when I first got married, when I was young, we used a lot of venison. We'd usually put a couple of deer and maybe an elk in the freezer every year, and we would use all the meat. You know, we didn't eat beef very much. We ate mostly venison for red meat, and that was kind of the lifestyle that we had going. Now we eat fish and chicken, and once in a while a steak. I would say a couple other things about this gun. This particular gun, I originally came when I was given to me, with a 4-power Weaver scope on it. And then I eventually upgraded it. This is a 3x9 scope. And it's a good sturdy scope. I've got scope caps on it that you can pop up to, make sure that the cap or the lens stays clean.
Yeah.
But I mounted the scope very well, and so I felt very comfortable grabbing the scope as a handle, and that half the time you can see I got a leather strap there. If I didn't have it slung over my back, I would be carrying the gun using the scope as a handle, and it worked fine. And all the years I did that, I never had to resight it because of that. Because I was using it as a handle. I bumped it a couple times and had to resight the gun for that. We'd sight the gun in at to where it hit dead on at 200 yards. We'd usually sight it in, we'd do an initial sighting at 25 yards. And then if you were hitting right on at 25 yards, then it would be hitting right on at 200 yards. And 100 yards, there'd be, because there's a curve in the flight pattern, it would be shooting about 2.5 inches high at 100 yards. So we actually sighted, depending on the gun range we were at, we would sight it in to hit high at 2.5 inches high at 100 yards. At 200 yards, then it would be right on target. And so that was kind of the rule of thumb that we followed for sighting in a gun.
Well, it's a beautiful gun, so it's definitely seen some use over the years.
Absolutely.
Yep. Is this your favorite gun in your collection?
Just because it's the one I've used the most.
Yeah.
And I used it as a kid, hunting deer. My first deer was taken with this gun. And I've shot a lot of deer with it, and a few elk. And tons of jackrabbits. It's just been a fun gun to shoot. It's got a good pop. And we used to never wear hearing protection at all when we'd go out and sight our gun in, and never when we were hunting. And now I'm a believer in wearing or protecting your ears. I've been what we call muzzle blasted a few times, and I'm sure that's why I have hard of hearing at this age. But I think it's really important to protect your hearing, particularly when you're around guns like this, because even if it's the gun you're shooting, there's still a pretty good muzzle blast that comes back and can ring your ears pretty good. So it's worth protecting your hearing, particularly when you're sighting them in on a gun range.
Yeah, if you're on a gun range, there's no reason why you shouldn't have hearing protection on.
Not.
You know, even while you're hunting, they have electronic earmuffs that you can hear outside noises, and then when the gun goes off or whatever, it'll dampen the noise. So you can still have the experience of hunting kind of without earmuffs, even though you have earmuffs on.
And it's well worth protecting your hearing, especially when you start getting older and you're losing it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, having been muzzle blasted a few times, didn't help your hearing.
What's your most favorite story with this gun?
Well, there's several stories that I tell, but the first buck that I shot was out down in 9 Mile Canyon. There was a long point. I walked out to the end of it, and as I was coming back, I jumped a couple of nice big 4-points, big ones, and I knocked one down, and it got up, and it was standing there, and I wasn't that good about picking a shot, so I picked the biggest spot on the deer and shot it like 2-3 times, and it was still standing there like pigeon-toed, and it finally fell over. Well, I had gut shot it about 4 times, 5 times. And then I heard another shot further up country, and when I walked up there, my mom had seen these deer coming, had waited, and took a really carefully placed neck shot. The deer was down immediately. Her buck was actually a little bit bigger than mine as far as the horns go. And then she helped me, she coached me to clean that deer out. And I cleaned this deer out a handful at a time. It was so messy. And it was terrible. Terrible experience. Then I went up and I cleaned her buck because my hands were already dirty. And her buck was so clean, and I didn't get blood on anything. I carefully cleaned it out, and she walked me through the process, and it taught me a lesson of it's nice if you're going to shoot a deer, make a good shot on it. You're not ruining meat. You're not making a mess to clean up. And so that was a contrast between two different deer. Mine was a mess to clean up. Hers was beautiful to clean up, very clean, and her deer was a little bit bigger too.
And that's a great lesson from your mom then.
Exactly.
How better of a lesson can you receive from your mom?
That's right. She knew what she was doing, and that her deer hung on in her bedroom wall for 30, 40 years, and now one of our grandsons has it. It's still a beautiful mount.
So, that's cool.
Anyway, that's one of my favorite deer stories.
I'm gathering lots of lessons from that. If you make a mess, clean it up.
Exactly.
You don't make a mess in the first place.
Yeah, a gut shot deer is not a good thing. You want to take a neck or something like that. It's going to be clean and leave the animal clean.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be harvesting all these cuts of meat. And we always did our own butchering. We never used a commercial butcher, so I grew up learning how to butcher a deer myself, and so we wouldn't cut bones with this power saw like they do beef. We would bone everything out. And I learned to love venison. In fact, I had a grandfather that was a cattle rancher, and he raised cattle for a living, but he preferred to eat venison. So
because he liked the flavor of venison.
He'd get 1 or 2 deer a year, and that's what he'd eat. So.
Oh, that's cool. Well, and I've learned the same thing from our hunting experiences stuff, being able to clean it, to gut it,
keep it clean,
cape it, debone it, pull the meat off, package it, cook it up and eat it. And it's truly given me appreciation for life and the ability to harvest an animal, right?
And most of the wild flavor in venison comes from leaving fat, or if you do cut a bone, that adds to the wild flavor. So it's debone it good, and you're just dealing with the meat. Good lean meat, then it's not as wild.
And even the hair, right?
Oh, hair.
So being able to cape it and make sure that you're getting all the hair off.
Keep the hair out of it. Now, this particular gun holds 4 shells in the magazine, and you can put 1 shell in the chamber. So you could actually be carrying, if you're hunting, 5 shots. It wasn't a big deal to keep. I mean, most of the time I probably kept the four shells in the magazine and just levered one into the chamber, because chances were you wouldn't need more than 4 shots anyway. So, and if you did, then you're a pretty bad shot.
So you just so like hiking and stuff, you probably typically didn't carry it with one in the chamber, because you still had 4 in the magazine, and when you saw something, then you'd go ahead and
throw a shell in. Then
that's definitely a safety precaution or whatever. It kind of helps with safety, even though you could flip on the safety, right, because it's got a safety,
right.
But if there's not a shell in the chamber, that gun, it's not going to bullet.
And the effective range of this, I consider the perfect range to be 100 to 200 yards. With a high-powered scope, like a 9-power scope, you could easily take a shot at 300 yards, but your drop is going to, that bullet's going to be dropping pretty fast. And so it's not near as effective of a shot. It doesn't have the hit power, doesn't have knockdown power, and it's not that easy to make a good shot. So I very seldom ever took a shot over out to 300 yards. 200 yards was ideal, and anything closer, 200 to 100 yards is perfect. And this we mounted a kick pad on this. It takes a little bit of the kick out of it, because it's got a pretty good kick. It came with steel plate on the back of it.
Oh, it did? Oh, okay.
And I've shot a lot of guns with steel plates, and the kick pad makes a big difference. So it's kind of a hard rubber, but it still makes a difference.
Yeah, it still kind of takes some of the...
kicks back in your shoulder.
Yeah.
And this strap is an army strap. In other words, you can use it as a shooting strap. You put your arm out through it, and then you can tighten it on to your arm, so it gives you support from here to here and to the gun. And so it's a specially designed. It's not just a sling; it's actually a shooting strap.
Are you talking about this right here, or how does it slide?
Yeah. So this is adjustable, and you can slide this up any length.
Oh, and it just slides. Look at that.
Yeah, and then
so you can slide it up or slide it down. Now is that lengthening it? It is.
That's as long as it gets right there, and you can slide it up a little bit.
Oh,
and
now
if you wrap it
really...
in your arm, and the way to get it real good tight is to where it comes across your chest and wraps up into your arm. So. There's a number of ways to do it.
Like
I can't remember exactly how to do it, but you can feel the little
little bit
stable. Yeah, but when you're taking a really long shot and wanted to be really stable, if you didn't have a tree or a rock to lean against, then you could do that with the strap and make it and that's why it was called a shooting strap. It came out of the military, and just that right there makes a difference.
The more contact points that you have, the more stable your shot is.
Right.
So if I just hold the gun up here like this, there's 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
If I go like this, there's 4.
And it actually comes across your chest.
And it comes, so maybe even like 5.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting down and I put my elbow on my knee, there's a contact point, then here's a contact point. So the more contact points, the more stable. Yep. Obviously, if I'm in a thing, that's like one big contact point.
My favorite contact point is just leaning against a tree.
Leaning against a tree. Yeah.
Or a rock.
Like bipod, you're increasing the contact points with those.
Because at 200 yards, you move the gun a fraction of an inch, it's moving several feet out there.
Yeah, quite versatile. That's pretty cool.
This is the comb, and it's kind of a raise, so you got one point for your shoulder, but it puts your face up a little bit so you lines up with your scope better. If you weren't shooting a scope, that wouldn't be necessary, but it is really nice when you're shooting a scope.
So this right here,
right? I remember it's called a comb. I don't remember.
It's kind of like for your cheek. Is that where you rest your cheek?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So is this the original stock? Have you refinished it or anything?
It's beat up like that because I used the gun a lot. No, it was a gun that I used, not looked at. So wouldn't put it on the wall as any kind of attractive firearm piece.
Except for you in and of yourself, if there came a day that you just wanted to look at it and remember, right? I mean, you could potentially put it on the wall. If you were to just go into the gun market and sell it,
right?
You're not getting like top dollar for the gun, but it definitely has for you a value of...
Right. It's about 55 years old, but it's not 100 years old. I have some guns that are 100 years old, and you can see I got duct tape under this scope cap so that it doesn't slide around and fall off. So it was a practical gun to use, not fancy.
Yeah, never underestimate the ability to use duct tape for all kinds of applications,
exactly.
right? I'd like to take a moment to share some exciting news about our Patreon page at Rugged Tactical. Our mission at Rugged Tactical is to take you on a journey, exploring the reasons why people own guns and how firearm ownership can have a positive impact in their lives. Support on Patreon helps us to achieve our mission. In return, patrons enjoy exclusive perks and benefits, such as early access to our videos and bonus content. Be sure to check us out at patreon.com/Rugged Tactical. Thank you for joining us on this meaningful journey.
When we were reloading, we came up with a favorite load, and our favorite load using 30-06 brass that was necked down to 270 was 130 grain soft tip, and so that it would expand, and 52 grains of 4831 powder. Now, I don't even know if they use that same powder nowadays, but that's the load that we shot with. We always sighted our guns in with that. We'd shoot with that, whether it was deer or elk. That's the load that we always used in the 270s that we shot.
Here we've got some more modern,
yes,
right? Like this is more up to date. These are bullets that you picked up for hunting,
right?
Super Performance Hornady 130 grain. So 130 grain. They have like a little plastic tip, that kind of helps with expansion and stuff, I would assume.
Right. Makes it almost like a little bit of a hollow point. Because the plastic is soft. But it's good for the ballistics because it cuts through the air very clean.
In a world with a lot of controversy, especially around guns, what is your opinion or your take as far as responsible gun ownership and the ability to have firearms?
Well, I think there's two reasons to have firearms. One is to harvest meat, and the second is to just be a protection for your home and your loved ones. Now, when it comes to harvesting, there are a lot of anti-hunters out there, and they don't like to see you shoot animals, but they'll go to the store and eat beef or chicken or fish or whatever that somebody else has harvested. And I'm thinking that's hypocritical. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with harvesting an animal, assuming there's enough of them, they're not endangered or anything. To shoot a deer and then use it properly, to salvage it and put it in your freezer and use it, is no different than the butcher running a cow into the slaughterhouse and whacking it with a hammer or whatever it is they do to kill it. So somebody that would be anti-hunting because it's cruel to animals, I'm thinking, if I was an animal, I'd much rather live my life running around on the free open range and then get harvested than be a cow sitting in a dung-filled corral all my life and then get harvested. So I can argue against that kind of thinking, and I think it's a good way to use the resources that grow on the land. If there's a surplus and there's enough animals to where you can justify a harvest, I think venison, I think all kinds of birds, I think fish it's appropriate to harvest them. If a person is a vegetarian and doesn't eat meat, then more power to them. I respect their position. But this land that we live in would be overrun pretty quickly if nobody ever harvested deer and elk and stuff like that. And then what we would be doing is killing them just to protect our other resources, like our farmlands and stuff like that, where we grow our vegetables that vegetarians eat. So anyway, it's just one of those arguments that I don't usually get involved in. But I respect a person's right to not eat meat, but I don't respect a person's criticism of hunting if they eat meat but they just don't like the way that you come by your meat. I think that's very hypocritical.
In a way, that's part of the human experience.
It is. Yep.
You know, being able to harvest an animal and to use it, to eat it, to
harvest it humanely.
Yeah. One is harvesting the animals, and then two, and I can think of a couple other reasons for firearm ownership. One is for self-defense. Being able to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Obviously, when guns are being used to remove or take away somebody else's right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that's not good. Right. But if somebody is coming and trying to take away your life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness, then firearms is a way that you can help protect those rights.
And I think that firearm ownership in the United States is such that people would be crazy to try to invade us.
Yeah, well, we've got a lot of guns here, for sure.
Yeah. And I've heard that was the reason that some, like, during the World War II experience of Pearl Harbor and the Japanese didn't invade us. Now, this may not be true at all. It may be other reasons. But because they knew that the citizenry was armed. And I think of so many people where there's been genocide, where if the citizenry had been armed, it wouldn't have happened. And that's within, the last 100 years.
Yes.
At the same time, I think responsible gun ownership means that you don't put guns in the hands of criminals if you can help it. Certainly not in the hands of somebody that's not responsible, like kids or youth and stuff like that's not properly trained. You need to control the guns, but like the Second Amendment says, you have the right to own a gun for your own protection and the protection of your country.
And then the third, obviously, is recreational. Right? There's sporting, shooting, clay pigeons, competitions, and we've participated in lots of competitions.
Right.
When it comes to the recreation side, what are some of your experiences there?
Well, I've done a lot of things. I don't particularly care to eat clay pigeons, but I love to shoot them. and I grew up hunting pheasants and quail and different kinds of animals. But so there's a lot of ways to get involved in recreational shooting. And I used to do more of that when I was younger. But I think there's nothing funner than maybe being out in the marsh hunting ducks and making a good shot. And, those are some of my most cherished memories is hunting with my dad or my sons, whether it be wing or deer or even shooting cottontails. So anyway, some of the best memories that I have.
One of the most fondest memories that I have is going with you and Grandpa and my siblings and cousins and uncles and doing like muzzleloader shoots.
Yep.
Right? We do a blanket shoot, everybody brings a prize, and we have a competition, and the person that got first place, he got to pick the first prize.
Yep.
And so how fun is that, right? I mean, it was just an incredible experience for me growing up. And so there's so many things. I'm sure there's lots of groups out there that if you can reach out to, find out where they meet, and you can participate in these activities and stuff and create lasting memories, right?
Muzzleloader shoots was a lot of fun for us for the last, 30 years.
So tell me a little bit about your trigger.
Well, we used to try to keep our trigger pull about 2.5 to 3 pounds.
Okay.
So that's a little bit on the light side, but you don't want it so light that it goes off by itself sometime when it bumps a twig or something.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know that I've tested the trigger pull on this for a long time, so I don't know exactly what it is.
Where it's at, and so you say typically 2.5
to 3 pounds is what we used to try to set our triggers at.
So I actually inherited Grandpa's 270, and I've kind of got used to the trigger pull on my 270. And when I went to shoot Grandpa's gun, it was substantially lighter.
Lighter, yeah.
The first time I shot his gun, it actually surprised me. Like I was not ready for the gun to go off because I was ready. I was used to my 270, and then when I started pulling his trigger, all of a sudden it went off, and I'm like, whoa, Yeah. And I actually quite liked it. Like when I kind of got used to it, it was really nice, right?
And there are two parts to the trigger pull. One is the travel, how far you have to pull the trigger back before it goes off. The other is the pounds of foot that it takes to shoot the gun off. So I don't like to have much travel. I like it to touch the trigger, and then when I apply the right trigger, the gun goes off.
Then it's there, yeah. So travel and actual pull, right?
And actual pull weight.
Trigger pull test, real quick, and then we'll go shoot your gun. You get to set the parameters. 1 shot, 3 shots, 5 shots. Well, we always offhand and all that.
We always use 3 shots as a group.
Okay.
So that you could draw the circle around the 3 shots, and that was your
group. Okay, so grouping. So on our targets there's like little numbers. So do you want to go for points, or do you want to just see who can get tightest group.
Tightest group is how we sight it in our guns. And
Okay, so
yeah, and if you can't shoot a tight group, how are you going to know it's really sighted in? The tighter the group, the better you are at shooting, and the more reliance you have or confidence you have in that particular gun to hit what you're pointing at.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Okay, so whoever gets the tightest group will claim the winner of our little shoot.
Sounds good.
And I really like that. It's a different spin because it's not so much as far as the points, but whoever can get the tightest group. Now, did you want to do it offhand, or should we put up like a bench or something?
Offhand is true shooting, because you very seldom have a bench rest when you're out deer hunting.
Yeah, exactly. I like the competition that's lining up right now. This will be fun. Let's do a trigger pull test. Did you already?
It's cocked.
It's cocked. Okay.
You can always tell it's cocked because there's a little bit of the bolt that sticks back here.
This right here.
If it was in flush, then that means it's been dry fired and it's not cocked.
Then it's not cocked anymore.
Yeah.
We got, let's see, 2 pounds and 5/8.
Ooh, perfect. 2.5 pounds, just perfect.
Yep, just slightly over 2.5 pounds. Okay, there we go.
Sounds good.
That's right on the money. That's kind of where you said that you had it.
Yeah, and it's been 20 years since I checked it. So.
Yeah. Okay.
At Rugged Tactical, we prioritize the acceptance, recognition, and implementation of safe gun handling techniques. Here is a 1-minute safety briefing. We strongly advocate for everyone to adhere to these principles. When not in use or during filming, ensure that the firearm is both unloaded and cleared. Regardless of its unloaded status, handle each firearm with the utmost caution and assume it is loaded at all times. Always keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction to prevent any accidental discharges from causing harm. Maintain a firm and proper grip on the firearm and refrain from placing your finger on the trigger until you are ready to shoot. Be conscious of your surroundings and identify your target, along with what lies beyond it. Bullets can penetrate walls and objects, emphasizing the need for situational awareness. Wear appropriate eye and ear protection to safeguard yourself during firearm use. Never use alcohol, over-the-counter drugs, or prescription medications before or during shooting activities. Store firearms in a manner that restricts access to unauthorized individuals. If facing emotional or mental struggles, have a person you trust store your firearms. For those new to firearms, we recommend taking a safety course to acquire fundamental knowledge and build confidence. At Rugged Tactical, safety is paramount, and we encourage responsible firearm practices to ensure a secure and enjoyable experience for all.
Kobe and Wayne here. We're at Impact Guns. We're going to go shoot his gun. We got a little bit of a winter storm here, and it is what it is. Good to drive in the snow, right? Okay, so let's go in. Here we are at Impact Guns. So we got our target sight up. We'll have you this target here, and I'll take this target here, and then we're going to do the best grouping out of 3. Do you want to shoot first, or do you want me to shoot first? You can shoot. Okay, so there's nothing in it yet. We got your ammo, and I'll let you do your thing. Okay, so go ahead and put your shells, your rounds in. Oh, I'll run this down. Goes all the way back. You're putting it at 5 power?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, ready to shoot.
Okay, so we're just diving right in, right? No practice rounds or anything like that. Just best grouping out of 3. So you've cleared it. You made sure that the barrel doesn't have anything in it. When's the last time you shot this gun?
Probably before we started muzzle loading.
25 years? Okay. Well, it's been about 25 years since he's had his gun out.
Ouch. I haven't shot with this shoulder.
Yeah. I don't want you to injure yourself. Was that low?
Yeah.
You want to take a look at it, or should I shoot and then we'll take a look?
You shoot them.
Shoot first, okay. Now, if you can push it down and
Yeah.
it's not chambered. Okay, now when I go, I'll be able to shell one in.
Right.
Okay, I was gonna say I'm not gonna reload it unless somebody else wants to shoot it.
I don't know where that last one hit. My first one was off, my second one was right in there, and the third one I have no idea. So let's take a look at it. Here we go, the moment. I have no idea. I was coming across, I have no idea if I pulled it or not. This is gonna be a tough one to judge. I don't know, this is gonna be interesting. Okay, so here's my dad's. 2 right here and one out. Here's mine, I got 2 right here and then 1 in.
All right, you had a smaller group in all 3 shots, so you won the contest.
So you just said that I have a smaller group out of all 3 shots,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And that's now, are you saying that because there's just a little bit of an outlier here?
Yeah, and if you group that, that makes it a pretty big group.
Okay, so if we were counting points, right? Because you got 7 plus 8. You got like 15 points, whereas I only have like 9 points.
The guy here went and hit a rock somewhere. That's what happened with that.
Okay, well, I kind of feel like we should call that a tie. Because you definitely got more points than I did, and I got a slightly better grouping. Yeah, so we'll call that one a tie. Well, thank you for coming out and letting us shoot this amazing rifle, right? It feels really good. Like, it feels a little bit lighter than my rifle. My rifle is a little bit heavier. The trigger pull to me felt really great.
Right.
Like I was able to. I really like the strap that you put on here, and it's an amazing gun.
Yeah.
It's a gun that's had a lot of use, and it's been a lot of fun for you, I'm sure, over the years. Anyways, that was a lot of fun. Thank you. Thanks for coming and being on the channel. I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. I got to hear some experiences that I've never heard before. Even growing up, you know, and being outside, outdoors, hunting and fishing and camping and having our own experiences.
Yeah.
There was something that I learned with regards to you and a lesson that you learned from your mom.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was a lot of fun. Thanks again. Appreciate you coming on the channel.
Been fun.
As the dust settles on another rugged tactical adventure, always reload your curiosity, keep the fires burning, and we'll catch you in the next round.